What comes after all of that, long term? Yeah, those are my plans for through Dunk and Egg and through the rest of through House of the Dragon season 3. Well, here's the issue. My channel has not been functioning at 100% capacity since I was covering filming reports for House of the Dragon Season 1 in 2021. Since then, I faced two disasters back to back, which reduced my YouTube work capacity. Well, two disasters, each of which ate up 1 year, and then I needed a full year to recover from them, so it was a 2 year cycle, two of them back to back, so 4 years. I didn't suffer much during the actual pandemic lockdown. It's when lockdowns officially ended in 2022 that the after effects hit me hard. And I realized this was actually true for a lot of people. I mean, I've seen economists on TV explaining it, that during the actual lockdown period, there were emergency disaster relief funds and so forth being pumped into the economy, and we were all, stuck at home anyway. There's not much else we could do. But as soon as the state of emergency ended, things ironically got worse. Which is sort of like mentally picture if a hurricane wipes out the town you're in, but you reached the safety of a bunker shelter. You're in a bunker. Things in the bunker aren't actually too bad. It's the designated safety space. It's when the hurricane is over and you leave the safety of the bunker that you come back up to ground level and you realize you're just standing in the rubble of what was once your town, and it will take years to rebuild from this, that this was a year-scale disaster. Subconsciously, without acknowledging it, I believe that when the vaccine shots first came out in, summer 2021, I thought jobs would be back by fall, or at least by 2022. I only just got out of university right before the pandemic hit. That I had an unpaid internship for a year, but my career really hadn't even started. I was still just starting out, and I'm in the same situation as a lot of people. Anyone, broadly speaking, just starting out on their post-school lives, just starting their adult careers, got hammered by the effects of the pandemic on the economy. Because it didn't affect everyone equally. The most vulnerable were affected drastically worse, and there's a lot of people worse off than I am. I mean, I have a roof over my head, but the surreal moments when you see boomers with tenured jobs at work, and they have tenured jobs, full benefits, complaining about how much the pandemic made the price of their second vacation homes going up. Oh no, I'm gonna have to sell my vacation home, or just... You're gaping at them going, for anyone of my generation, anyone who owns a house is considered rich. Homeowner is the new definition of rich. That why would I watch This Old House or home improvement things when I'm not a homeowner? And just that disconnect of you were not suffering as much as others. And I wasn't suffering. There's really people suffering, but it's... particularly in the job market, I mean, no one was hiring in 2022, and it was only in retrospect that I realized how unusual it was. Because I thought, oh, things will open up, it really wasn't apparent how bad things were. At the time, I think I internalized it, and I'm worried a lot of you might have internalized that too, that hopelessness and the sense of failure of, no one is hiring, it's my fault. And they didn't really do anything to convince us otherwise, That later I did get my first real job in summer of 23. And my new boss at the real job I got in summer 23, he said, no one I know of in our field was hiring anyone until right now when I hired you, summer of 23. That... since it's been well over a year since technically the pandemic ended in early 2022, no one was hiring in 2022. And so retroactively realizing it wasn't just my specific experience, 2022 was this soul-crushing year for anyone who, bad luck of the draw, just happened to be starting out in the job market post-school. in which the only jobs being offered to anyone were for, oh, do you have 5 years experience? There really weren't like entry-level internships or anything. And that whole thing of you need experience to get experience was taken to a warped extreme. And I actually would have felt better if they said, I'm sorry, it's a pandemic stuff, we're not hiring anyone. Rather than admit that, I mean, for everything I applied to dozens of things, and dozens of interviews, they treated it as just, well, we're assessing you, and not, sorry, we're not really hiring right now. I'm worried that happened to a lot of you guys out there of just, what is wrong with me? It was only by the time I got my real job the next summer for 23, they said, no one was hiring, that you really shouldn't have even applied. That this gave me a skewed view of what the workplace is like. And I know the internship system and everything is already been bad for the last 20 years, that the pandemic made it even worse. And I'm worried that, like, employers don't even realize that, okay, you've taken that to the extreme, even though things got slightly better in 23, that, well, you need 5 years experience. You have no training pipeline. You have no entry-level positions, and you wonder where, well, someone else has to get entry-level experience. And then they complain there's a labor shortage. You know? That the system, the already broken system, has finally hit tilt with all of that, and I'll explain that more. But, well, to give a fake example, this isn't something I do with people I know do. Take, for example, film restoration. Film restoration for old nitrate stock film reels from the 1920s. That is a very complex, specific chemical process. It's a learned skill, and no, even at the graduate level, there are not university courses that teach something that specific. For like art restoration, or tech restoration. And there's this huge disconnect between that, oh, well, you'll get the training somewhere else. Do you mean from another job or another university? Because universities aren't giving this training. There aren't courses on these things. And if you're only hiring 5 years experience, you're not taking in at your company entry-level people to train them. Where do these skills get taught? And even a few times I saw people who, while they did vaguely think they would be training people, had no idea how to train them. Like, being able to train someone else is a skill, pedagogy, education, and gave terrible instructions. So it's not really a system for getting people from university into a multi-year job. And the pandemic made it drastically worse. So 2022 was this soul-crushing year of cranked up to 11, realizing the pandemic screwed up the job market on a scale of years, and I was just starting out. That wasn't the worst thing that happened to me in 2022, though. But, what happened was when I went to that job conference, like I said, back in right after Thanksgiving this year, which, well, it was a conference for my field, and they were having organizations at it, but at that work conference, the first thing the first speaker said when they got to the podium was, in terms of the tariffs and other craziness happening to the economy, the job market for people starting out now in 2025 is as bad as it was in 2020. Like, openly admitting that. For our field. That it dialed everyone back to zero. So, recognizing the impact of all of this, the whole point of this work conference last month was all the organizations and guilds from my field are going to put together a series of regular training workshops through 2026 to help everyone starting out early in their careers. We realized everyone starting out has had a miserable year. We're going to have training workshops from our various guilds and affiliations and organizations. And what I'm wondering here is, why didn't they do this sooner? It's not like I wasn't paying attention. That only after what happened in 2025, you're going to try to do emergency training stuff in 2026. Where were you in 2022? That you didn't think to have that after a 2-year pandemic where you were sitting around and had little else to do but think about what comes next? That why, after 2 years of lockdown, wasn't there some sort of, Great Depression style Works Progress Association job training program. I think of my grandfather coming home from World War II. He went to college on the GI Bill after that. That they recognized we need to train all of these guys who lost their best years of their youth when they might have been going to college or vocational training for jobs, whatever. They lost that opportunity, and we need to, the phrase is, invest in human resources. A long-term investment in human resources. There were massive training programs after World War II for GIs under the GI Bill. And on the one hand, I'm happy that my field is going to have training things now, but for various things, you get to pick and choose. But I was also sitting there stunned about there was zero plan after the pandemic lockdown. And I will never forget that. The sense of betrayal from everyone who was in a tenured position of just, didn't you worry about the people starting out? Or that we would need to get on our feet from this in our in the various organizations that I'm a member of. You really just thought, oh, we're going to slog through one day to the next. We're not really hiring. We'll just ask for 5 years experience. I'd actually felt better if why don't they just tell everyone you might need to take night courses for a year because no one is hiring? That would have been honest, as opposed to every week doing job applications and interviews that there are no jobs. What's wrong with me? And only retroactively did everyone realize, like I said, my other job, that was a really screwed up thing. Not just that the situation was like that in 22, but that there was no guidance. And was there a plan for when the lockdowns lifted? Of what are we going to do to get everyone back on track? I don't know. And I didn't expect them to solve everything. It really didn't feel like there was a plan. And now, ironically, things are back down to that level economically, and they actually have a plan now. And it's just, what were you doing before? But that's not really as bad as the other stuff that happened in 22. That at the very start of 2022, February 22, I was just wrapping up filming reports on House of the Dragon Season 1. Which, due to COVID shutdowns, every other week filming had to go into lockdown again. So instead of ending in like October when they normally would, they actually did finish filming on Valentine's Day on February 14th for Season 1. And we're waiting on like 1 or 2 scenes they needed to film in group shots, but 1 week after that, I remember, because it was the week after the Super Bowl, when the Super Bowl 2022, when the first big Lord of the Rings Rings of Power trailer was released, was right when filming was wrapping up, and I was reporting on, oh, this is what Lord of the Rings looks like, this is another fantasy show. Like a week after the Super Bowl, I noticed that one of my 2 cats had lost his appetite. So I took him to the vet thinking he had a bladder infection or something, and they promptly rushed him to intensive care, and discovered that he had severe congenital heart problems, any one of which was fatal on its own. They said he had a year at most to live, and he was 5. And he didn't even live a year, he died a month later. And the multiple problems, they said this is officially unusual, that in our entire 30-year career as a vet, that it's from the sonogram, it's like he had the heart of a dying 20-year-old cat in a 5-year-old's body, with like 3 things that individually were fatal. He had a death sentence 3 times over, and they said this is officially like getting struck by lightning. The rarity of this, we've never seen it this bad in a cat this young. This is bizarre. He didn't deserve a death sentence 3 times over. And to have something that rare and unlucky happen to him. That it didn't ruin some cosmic plan for him to be sitting in the window with his brother, excitedly looking at birds flying by and meowing at them. Who did that hurt? I don't know. So he didn't get to keep doing that. He died a month later. His brother misses him. I still miss him. And the point is, I was in a state of genuine bereavement after that. Because of it wasn't just one thing, but also multiple problems stacking up. The stress of being in pandemic lockdown for 2 years, and oh no, what's going to happen to the economy, all this other stuff. And then it was as if a satellite fell on someone, you know? Just what are the odds that something this random could happen and improbable on top of everything else? That was the last straw, and I really just freaked out. And I'm sorry if you guys had to see me what I was like then. I was really losing it. So, just as like the same week that I finished wrapping filming reports on season 1, this happened. So all of those, because we knew the show was coming out in the fall, started last week of August. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I had like 5 to 6 months head start on season 1, in which I was going to be working on filming lore videos in advance. And I got nothing done between February and September, because I was just out. And then on top of that, the soul-crushing week to week of 2022 where there are no jobs, while I'm bereaved and all this other stuff. It was a scary time. On top of that, in pure desperation, I took the only job I could get starting in the fall, and I shouldn't have. I had a miserable time. I knew it was a bad job going in, but I said I haven't worked in 3 years. I don't have a choice about whether to take a job if it's good or not. It's the only one. It was not worth it. I should have quit the first week. I would have if I could. Everyone there was an idiot. I stuck it out until the end of the year, then left. So by December, I was just shot from that. Reached Christmas 2022, I was barely able to keep up doing episode reviews for House of the Dragon Season 1. I wasn't making lore videos concurrent with episodes. I tried, stopped by the second episode. Finally collapsed into Christmas break of 2022. Then a close family friend died on Christmas morning. I mean, not that it was a huge surprise. He had cancer pretty bad. He'd been in decline for a long time. It wasn't a surprise he was dying. It's just, this couldn't have happened a month later or a month earlier. This had to happen over the holidays, on Christmas morning. What are the odds? And it was almost like this sick joke of and some other bad thing has to happen as an exclamation point at the end of a terrible year. So, all of this stuff combined, that the miserable experience at the job I shouldn't have taken convinced me I can't do anything right, because I shouldn't have taken it in the first place. It was a terrible position, but I just shut down after that. That this 2022 is easily the second worst year of my life. And I say that in comparison to, in order to find the scale of this, in order to find a worse year than 2022, I'd have to go back to when I was 4 years old, and in the same calendar year, my parents divorced, and then my grandmother died of a sudden brain aneurysm. Within the same calendar year. I would have to go back that far to find a worse year than this. Obviously, that's head and shoulders above how bad 2022 was. I'm just saying, for a sense of scale, that's the only thing I can think of worse than this. So, really, reporting on Season 1 as it aired, just doing episode reviews, was the only thing that kept me clinging to sanity. Much less getting work done. That's the only thing that kept me from falling down. Then after reaching Christmas break and just everything that happened after this terrible year, I basically collapsed and didn't get up again for months. Like, even by, not just reporting on the channel, I mean by summer, I noticed that I didn't remember anything before Easter very clearly. That just passed out on the couch. Then things picked up again by May, as we were all excitedly reporting on House of the Dragon Season 2 filming leaks, because coming off of Season 1 we were excited for them. Then I got my first real job in July of 23. So, just as I lost a full year in 2022 from all these disasters in it, of zero job market, sudden death in the family, it took me another year of slow and steady recovery to get back up to 100%. That, well, summer of 23 through summer of 24, just gradually learning to walk again. getting back up to that mental state where I'm working at 100% from how bad everything was. And you should be able to cover filming reports and current news as well as making long-term lore videos, two things at once. I was in no state to do that. I barely kept up with filming reports. But eventually I came to a point where, like, just by summer of 24, I think I was back up to 100%, where I could have started doing lore things just in time for House of the Dragon Season 2. I went, oh, great, I spent a year recovering, I'm ready to hit the ground running again and actually be functioning 100%. And then we had to deal with the disaster of the season had problems from the strike, that without rewrites it was poorly paced, that Zaslav literally cut off the final 2 episodes, all of this backlash, and we knew these might have affected it, we didn't know how much, and I actually don't think it was that bad, but we didn't think it would be as bad as it was. And then to see Martin and Condal fighting with each other through traded blog posts after the season a month later. As many have said, it felt like your parents were fighting. So this second disaster of dealing with controversies from Season 2 and how upset everyone was, and then we just needed a break from all the toxic clickbaiters and stuff. So on the one hand, my personal life in terms of job stuff is still going a lot better than 2022. No other disaster since then, but it's the reverse of that now House of the Dragon was having problems, and I went on a break for 9 months, basically, until we got new filming news. Echoing that first cycle where 2022 was awful, I rebuilt my mind reporting on Season 2 leaks and filming. Then we had Season 2 backlash, and I rebuilt my mind and my capacity and work ethic around reporting on Season 3 filming news. And now here we are at the end of the second cycle, so 4 years later, going into Dunk and Egg, where I've caught up just in time for Dunk and Egg. Wow. But no, the Season 3 filming was encouraging collectively. Not any one thing, just collectively it seems like things are going okay. Hopefully we're not about to slide into another disaster like I thought the start of Season 2 was the moment we're back up to 100%, then something else went wrong. But the end result of all of this, I have not been caught up on backlogged work since House of the Dragon Season 1 filming wrapped in February 2022. The same month my cat's sudden fatal heart condition started showing symptoms. Just mentally, it's so weird looking back on the analysis videos I did on the Super Bowl trailer, the first trailer for the Lord of the Rings TV show. I can point to that as the last time I was normal. That was the last one I made right before the diagnosis came, so even a month later I'd look back on it and say I sound like a different person. Well, the good thing is that we will big section break here. Good thing is that we will officially never have a long gap in content again like we did for the past year and a half. That was another thing that was mid-level disaster in these 4 years of disasters, is a show of this scale and not batch renewing it. They should have batch renewed it. They were putting it out every other year. Thankfully, even HBO itself has now admitted we know how much this hurts shows. The other streamers are doing that. They admitted this is a terrible idea. They were copying what Netflix did. And they can't make it happen faster, but at least they can make a cinematic universe so it alternates between 2 active shows that, well, we'll have Dunk and Egg alternating with it every other year, which is fine. That keeps interest in the franchise as a whole up. That works. So we will never have a gap in content for the franchise as a whole longer than a year ever again. That is good news. That is encouraging. That's what they said in their big announcement in late November, that saying, this point forward, at least 1 TV season a year, 2 in 26 and 2 in 28, because Dunk and Egg is going to be every January for 3 consecutive years, 26, 27, 28. House of the Dragon will be summer 26, summer 28. That's the rest of what I call Phase 1 in the Westeros cinematic universe. By then, we'll know more about what's coming in Phase 2. We'll also know more about what's going on with the Warner merger by then. We have already rounded the corner. There will never be gaps like this again. The writer's strike was a one-time thing. That Season 3 was not made during a writer's strike that cut off the ending at the last minute. And imagine how different it will be because of that. Yes, there are always story changes, but just the obvious pacing problems and cutting off the ending, that is clearly something that is not going to happen again, objectively. So all these things went wrong in Season 2 due to a confluence of factors, but that is all behind us now. So the reason for my long and rambling self-assessment here on a scale of years, I was so far behind reporting on House of the Dragon that all I managed to do was keep up with active news or active episode reviews. Like filming leaks, casting news, and I barely kept pace with those. Like I said, Season 1 and 2, I was just scrambling to catch up in time for the premiere. I never had time to research all the behind-the-scenes content, which is what I worry about all the time. Behind-the-scenes videos and interviews, which turned into a huge backlog. And you think, oh, well, it's just on YouTube. They put it out on YouTube now, but guys, these things are basically the Blu-ray bonus content. It's just they put it out for free now. What used to be the stuff that we'd excitedly wait for to come out with the Game of Thrones Blu-ray cycle, with episode commentaries, with behind-the-scenes specials, animated things, that stuff they now put out just on YouTube. With, they have a podcast, but the last 20 minutes are the real part, where they have a 20-minute interview with cast members per episode, for free on YouTube. And they have these really well-made behind-the-scenes, The House That Dragons Built series and how they physically produced everything. And with Game of Thrones, we get a show in the spring, and then it would end by June, and then by Christmas, in the middle of the cycle, we'd be looking forward to a new Blu-ray release to have more info to go over. And in summer, we'd have filming reports. Well, going through that stuff takes time, and a major reason I started my channel is my horrified realization that news sites at the time really were not scrutinizing the Blu-ray commentaries to the level they should. I mean, even if they did listen to them, they just speed through them and they just said something really weird in that and you didn't pick up on it. Some of them were actively hiding things from us that I realized, unfortunately, despite the time investment, I need to personally check these things. Either because I catch things others miss, not a lot of people want to put the work in, or things are being hidden from us. Mostly it's just to squeeze out all the trivia from it, though, but for how filming went. But yeah, scrutinizing the Blu-ray bonus content is a major task, and it's just on YouTube now. It's time-consuming. I never got to do it to the level I wanted, where I'm scrutinizing line by line, taking screenshots, taking notes. I never got to do that even for Season 1. And it was already a backlog. It grew into a bigger backlog with Season 2. So I have this backlog of 18 episodes worth of bonus content that I never actually managed to go through. And therefore, now that I will allegedly be working at 100%, caught up to the point that I have 4 months to work on advanced lore videos for Season 3, second half of 2026 will be devoted to finally catching up on the backlog of behind-the-scenes bonus content, cast interviews in other sources as well, and basically every Emma Darcy, Olivia Cook, and Matt Smith interview about the show. They've done podcasts, plus the HBO official podcast, plus the behind-the-scenes videos, documentaries. I have never been in a position where I was ahead enough on schedule to actually do that. Well, second half of 26, the season ends first week of August, so it's more like 5 months, not 6, but you know what I mean. That I want to catch up on this because the bonus content backlog has come to symbolize for me how much I've fallen down since February of 2022. that had these disasters, had there not been a death in the family, this is taking back what I lost, that I should have been in a position to cover these things as they came out in fall of 2022, and I just couldn't. That the goal is that by Christmas at the end of 2026, I want to work up to be where I should have been 4 years ago, that level at Christmas 2022, where I'm up to speed with all the behind-the-scenes content. And I've been behind for so long, it's hard to even remember my mental state when I was ahead of the game. Last time I was on schedule was when I was covering filming news for Season 1. Well, you might ask, though, because of all this in terms of the scheduling, what happens beyond 2026? And here I'm talking about long-term goals. I said this is middle term next year, long term, that allegedly by the end of the year, when House of the Dragon 3 is over, I'm going to be spending the rest of the year catching up on the behind-the-scenes stuff since the beginning. What happens once I catch up? That I'm going to... You think 1 episode per week, 18 episodes, that might take 4 months. I'd rather force it to get done by late October. Because when will I ever be at 100% again? I might not be at a future point, but I'm tentatively trying to get done by Halloween, end of October. It'll probably end up happening by the end of December, because then I have to get into Dunk and Egg Season 2. That does raise the question, though, what about Dunk and Egg 2 and 3 and House of the Dragon 4? A big thing I realized, for the rest of Phase 1, for those seasons, they're really not going to generate a need for that many lore videos that are so big I need to work on them in advance. Like, I might make lore things to react to something they mention in dialogue, spur of the moment, but long-form, heavy things like this is what dragon seeds are, or Season 1, this is what, like, moon tea is, or something, because we knew it was coming, versus... We need advanced lore videos for Dunk and Egg Season 1 because it's a new show. It's things that introduce new characters, locations, or concepts fuel advanced lore videos. Dunk and Egg is such a small-scale show that later seasons aren't really going to need that, at least for Seasons 2 and 3, that I don't need to do advanced work on those. And House of the Dragon Season 4, similarly, we're so far along that most of this was Seasons 1 and 2 when you're introducing new characters, locations, concepts. So, through the rest of Phase 1, like I said, I'm going to be spending the 4 months between Dunk and Egg and House of the Dragon 3 making lore videos. I won't need to do that again for a couple of years. That just the opportunity isn't there. We will when Phase 2 starts up. Like after House of the Dragon, if they make a Regency show, or more likely they make a Targaryen Conquest show, I think would be the new flagship. I'm hoping for a Regency show as like another show just to fill the schedule, but Targaryen Conquest and maybe even a Nymeria show they've been discussing. We would be making advanced lore videos for this whole other prequel era, new characters. Until then, which isn't coming until like 2029 or 2030, I'm not busy planning out lore videos I never get to. This is the first time I'm going to be able to make advanced... Originally, I thought I'm going to be making advanced lore videos in summer of 2022, and I'm going to be keeping pace with the behind-the-scenes content. That didn't happen. This year, I hope to make advanced lore videos for Season 3, keep pace with the behind-the-scenes stuff, and then catch up on the other behind-the-scenes stuff through the rest of the calendar year. Not going to happen. For the rest... Look, what are you going to do? Make an hour-long video on Eustace Osgrey? Or, well, Rohanne Weber is actually an interesting character, but that's an exception. For the most part, you're not going to be making that much on it. Maybe stuff on the Blackfire Rebellion, but it's not, like, enough to plan out a video every day for a full week, for every week it airs. You kind of might have been able to do that for House of the Dragon Season 1, because it's all expansive prequel era. But I don't really see making more than maybe half a dozen shorter videos. There really isn't advanced work to do for Dunk and Egg Season 2. So, what am I going to be doing through 2030? Just guessing, really, but... Well, through 2028. The 2028 is going to be the same as 2026, where we're pretty busy covering 2 shows in the same year. Dunk and Egg 3 And then all the big stuff about House of the Dragon Season 4. Even though we don't need to make advanced lore videos for them, there's going to be a lot in the news. There's going to be a lot of buzz and everything from its big finale and everything. What are we going to do in 2027? Because like I said, I go through 2026, I get up to Dunk and Egg Season 2, I spend 2 months focused on covering that. March of 2027, looking ahead, I'm free up until House of the Dragon Season 4, the next June of 2028. Minus 2 months in the middle for Dunk and Egg 3, but that's March to the following June would be 13 or so months, 14 months minus 2 in the middle for Dunk and Egg, but still that's about 12 solid months where I'm not working on anything else. What are we going to do then? During that full year where Dunk and Egg 3 won't generate much advanced work? Well, for starters, there will be filming news again. They're not filming in 2026. Dunk and Egg doesn't generate filming leaks. House of the Dragon does. That there will be filming leaks. Just as I spent this year covering Season 3 filming news, I'll be covering Season 4 filming news. Which I hope will be a lot like back in 23 when everyone liked the show, so people were watching any leak they could get on what Season 2 was like. My hope is Season 3 wins everyone back, so more people watch those, but even if they don't, I'll still be reporting on them. Difference is, this year, like I said, I was not at 100% capacity. I was at half capacity, because we were all really stunned after Season 2 and the arguing, and I was working my way back up to that. The hope is, after Dunk and Egg 2, I hit the ground running, that I'm not taking 9 months vacation because this is all upsetting and I can't keep arguing. And the strain of it and everyone yelling and then ignoring things. So I can actually juggle 2 things at once. I'll be spending 27 days. It won't be, oh my god, there's no content either. It'll be, I will be putting out regular filming news, casting news. What you've already come to expect from me for the past year, that kind of thing. It's just I'll be able to do advanced work on other long-term projects. But without lore videos to work on, what would I be doing? What I've slated 2027 for after Dunk and Egg 2 is I need to restart from scratch my behind-the-scenes documentaries. My documentaries on what things were really like on Game of Thrones behind the scenes. And not just them, but also these are things the media did to ignore it and cover it up, and the media is just clickbait now. It's not that the whole system is corrupt that led to this. It's all interconnected, and the things that led to the writer's strike, that the studios have problems, that kind of thing. I have not worked on that since summer of 2020. Because when the Blu-rays came out, Christmas 2019, then because of the pandemic, we were all freaking out. It took me about 6 months to go through every single thing, because also it was a gold mine. That the commentary tracks on Season 8 are hilariously admitting terrible things. And the behind-the-scenes videos, or the documentaries they put out, it's just, you're digging yourself in a deeper hole. That I'd finished going over all that Blu-ray content in about 6 months. Should have been shorter, but I was distracted from the pandemic stuff with my family, trying to be together in lockdown and stuff. But by summer 2020, when we got the first rumblings that they were going to start casting for House of the Dragon, I made the conscious choice that I've exhausted everything from the Season 8 Blu-rays, and in terms of rebuilding the franchise, I need to focus on the prequels now. Eventually, I took down the original documentaries I made. You may have noticed that. Because the original ones, because I'm not a YouTuber. I had no idea what I was doing when I started my channel in early 2017, right in the break between Season 6 and 7. My original videos were shit. They were doo-doo. In the words of Gene Wilder, it was god-awful. I look back at them and I can't believe I put this shit out. They did have a lot of unique research, and that's the thing, that at terrible quality, with my ranting, poorly scripted, with no technical skill in videography or audio quality, people still thought they were amazing because I was the only one doing this research, presenting stuff from wikis and things, I've researched, they're saying terrible things behind the scenes. I had no idea how to present it. I mean, for God's sake, just purely in terms of the audio quality, I was using the internal microphones on my laptop when I started. Give you a sense, I didn't know people would watch. The hole in the bucket, well, if I'd known people would watch, I would have gotten a better microphone. So just awful, awful. And even like a year later, I only got a webcam microphone, just a basic, off-the-shelf thing. Tell me if you remember in the comments, I didn't get a real podcaster quality microphone, like professional microphone, the one I'm using now, until last Christmas of 2024. After season 2 of House of the Dragon. Like, I look back at videos I made during season 2, and I can't believe I put them out. And also, I mean, because I have to remember, because I made a big announcement video that I spent a month over, well, it wasn't entirely a wasted 9 months, because I did spend a month over Christmas break looking through a lot of tutorials on how I switched to using DaVinci Resolve as an editor. And so it's a better editor, and I actually sat down to look at all the tutorials to finally learn how to do all of this, because I'm not a visual design major, I'm a history major. So I was a medievalist, so in terms of all that I hope you've noticed the massive glow up in video quality now that I actually have a real microphone and have some slightly better skill at video editing. And also, I'm not rambling as much. Obviously, this is a rant because this is a podcast, but in terms of when I make real videos, it's been, dear God, if I'm making these things in 2027, it'll have been 10 years since I started. And the hope is I have 10 years more experience to make them better. So I'm not revising them. I'm taking my original notes and remaking them from scratch. Because I realized these things are so amateurish, I look like a crazy person. They make it look bad. It is actually hurting my cause. So I nuked them. I deleted all of mine. Some of these things had 250,000 views because they came out at the height of Game of Thrones. I wonder how much that hurt me in the algorithm. I said, this is awful work. I can't be represented by this. I need to start over. Which is hard, but I'm not going to be releasing these new documentaries from scratch in 2027. I'm going to spend 12 months working on them and then release them during Season 4 of House of the Dragon when the most people are watching, because viewership spikes during a big active season like that. However, even this will not be a culmination or climax, because, and this is a big point here, I've come to realize there is no silver bullet, that there is no one thing we as fans can do to actually spark the media turning on Benioff and Weiss, making op-eds against them. What really convinced me of that was the reaction to House of the Dragon Season 1. Up to that point, I thought, like the stuff against Joss Whedon with Justice League, I thought our fan campaigns might get people to start doing things, or at least I had this in the back of my mind. I thought, if House of the Dragon Season 1 resurrects a dead franchise, does so well at awards like it won a Golden Globe, I thought this would lead to the media to start asking, well, what went wrong on the other show, And they didn't. That if you're praising it for reviving a dead franchise, what killed that franchise? You think they'd be talking about that, but many still fear, either Benioff and Weiss, or fear being blacklisted by the industry overall for speaking out about it. Same situation as with Joss Whedon for years. And even specific things you saw at the time, like during Season 1, praising how well Rhaenyra's sex scenes were handled by a female director. There were whole articles praising it that only indirectly backhanded referred to, these were well filmed, parentheses, the unstated thing is, in contrast to the juvenile trash Benioff and Weiss infamously did. But we didn't get this wave of op-eds calling out what the heck happened on the other show. Was this even the real ending since Season 5? The real second half of a... No. So if House of the Dragon Season 1 couldn't generate that kind of backlash, we can't force that to happen on our own. That's just the reality of the situation. What we can do is lay groundwork for the day that backlash eventually does happen. I mean this in specific comparison to prior fan campaigns against toxic bosses, like Joss Whedon or Nickelodeon's Dan Schneider. Like, when news broke about them, it was on a scale of 20 years. Like, when they were yelling about Joss Whedon, it was about stuff he did on Buffy, not just stuff he did on Justice League. That until we get that Ray Fisher moment where somehow it comes out in the news, we need to have our finished documentaries on hand showing these are all the other things they did. The most we can do is prepare for that moment. We can't force it to happen with our own hands. So I'm not actively, ambulance chasing, knocking on doors. Hey, you want to report on this? I know, even reporters who want to report on it can't, because their editorial board is not in a position to do that yet. So what can we do is we need to rebuild the fan infrastructure. This is something I have always been saying since I started my channel, because we lost that fan infrastructure by 2014, 2015. That anyone who is willing to criticize Benioff and Weiss either stopped reporting on it or got marginalized. So that by 2017 or so, it was nothing but the blind praise hype fans in charge of everything, or reporters who were lying to us and hiding things from us that we couldn't trust. And we weren't running our own convention panels anymore or anything. So just that the whole array of everything you associate with fandom infrastructure in terms of the fan sites that actually wanted to report on the TV show to criticize it at a certain point, like the book fan sites didn't want to keep arguing. I understand that, but the Quislings and collaborators at WatchersOnTheWall.com went from being people who wrote essays about you in season 2 that you're underusing Catelyn Stark to, in 2016, 2017, making a fan convention of their own to praise the show after everything that happened in seasons 5 and 6. And praise it because they liked hanging out with celebrity actors. It was never about the truth, and it's weird when I've heard other people who went to those cons, like Quinn's Ideas and stuff. He said, I'm critical of the show, and just privately, they really would ostracize you if you were not, part of the team on the winning side there. But we lost all of that when you saw the fandom apparatus had gone over to the other side and was blind praise, and we had already lost that by season 8, and thankfully Watchers on the Wall and all these other things largely shut down by now, but nothing stepped up to replace it. Well, I like to think we've made some progress in terms of rebuilding fan news social networks just over social media. Like the new generation of spy reporters that popped up for House of the Dragon Season 1 and kept doing it are now really established. Woke the Dragon, House of the Dragons, that even in their dying days, like the last year they were active, Watchers on the Wall was loosely, anemically following season 1, but they weren't reporting on it barely, versus just new people popped up on social media, new generation, covering all these things. One thing that fills me with hope is, there's twice as many YouTube channels now for A Song of Ice and Fire. Going into House of the Dragon, there were about 20 that were still active from Game of Thrones. Now, there weren't a lot of new ones during season 2, but during season 1 of House of the Dragon, another 20 or so new YouTube channels popped up. This whole younger generation, Quinn the GM, Hills Alive, Crusader Chris, Fantasy Haven, all of these other great channels. And that fills me with hope that this whole new group of people who were not blind faith in the original show, but came after the failure of season 8 and have a more of an objective viewpoint on things. So that helps that we have more fan reporter circles, like or the fan groups, like, I'm talking about like Twitter circles, like the Rainiscent fan groups, the anti-Rainiscent fan groups, the Damiras, or the pro-Greens fans that hate them both. The fact that there are fan groups again, discussing things with each other, is more than we had in the depths of 2020, when everything was dead. So, on a grassroots level, we have a bit more fan social networks now. But in terms of all we can do is prepare, rebuild the fandom infrastructure, and on a scale of years, the good thing, this is a good thing, that I'm not like, oh no, that's the climax, then what happens? It's an ongoing thing because the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. But the three goals are first, this one actually does have an endpoint, actually finish up presentable fan documentaries on what really happened. Just all the stuff we do have, just to have it on hand. It's not to mount a campaign, because I know that's not going to do anything on its own. It's for when we do get our Ray Fisher moment, Ray Fisher who turned on Whedon publicly, we can, back it up. I hope to be done with those. I'm working on it from early 2027 through 2028 when I present them. The goal being that we reach the end of 2028 with all that behind us, up to speed, and looking ahead to Phase 2 shows, whatever they are. Can't see beyond that now. It's too far ahead. The other two things we can do are, in terms of rebuild the infrastructure, are, like I said, we don't have a convention presence. I mean, the pro-Benioff and Weiss convention ended, but so did the book one. That there used to be a small, but steady for years, A Song of Ice and Fire Con held in Ohio. I mean, I know History of Westeros went to it. That shut down. And just in terms of the local scene, because I've been going to conventions since the late 90s as a kid, but the pandemic hammered the local convention scene and the regional convention scene. This has been a trend since 2008. I saw this wonderful article explaining it a decade ago, that there was a time when conventions were run by the fans for the fans, and Marvel and DC Comics fans could complain all they wanted about whatever was happening. Star Wars fans could complain about things. There came a shift where the conventions were increasingly run by the corporations, and they don't want you to yell. And fair enough, I won't yell at them, but if it was an amazing experience going to New York Comic Con this October and actually wow, there's other YouTubers here. And then we go off and have our own meeting or something. So I'm not saying, get a New York Comic Con panel to yell about anything. They probably wouldn't let you do that, but so we could gather at what Martin did when he'd go and have the order of the Philly cheesesteak, have an after party just to coordinate, just to rebuild the social networks. Not even with a goal of campaigning against what happened to the old show, but just to campaign for new shows to help promote them. Or, look, there were problems from the writer's strike in House of the Dragon, but we're optimistic about the future. Other things, just to socialize, if nothing else. And on the one hand, the conventions were kind of in decline even before the pandemic, and then in the wake of the pandemic, had even shut down. I have really noticed a big change in the past year alone. In 2024, a lot of local and regional New York area conventions started up that were not there in 2023. That it took a while, but eventually people forced by the pandemic to realize we do want to have live in-person events to go to. They're fun. So my advice is that this is not going to achieve any specific goal. It's just, this is something I want you guys to do. I don't think, any one of you will be able to get a panel at San Diego Comic-Con, but your local and regional sci-fi conventions that are not just one thing a year, but one thing every quarter. Here's the fall convention, here's the spring convention, just whatever's in the major city in your area. Anything you don't need an airplane to travel to. It was what I think was local. Just submit a fan meetup, or maybe not a full panel, maybe just a gathering for cosplay, anything. All of us need to be working to rebuild our convention presence, and not to make our own convention the way Watchers on the Wall tried to, because they couldn't sustain that. It's too much work relative to what it's doing, and we'd be preaching to the choir. That it's to get a convention track at a local convention. Just to meet and greet. We don't even need to complain about anything, just to rebuild our social circles. Or having a nice fan panel to say, hey, here's things we look forward to in Dunk and Egg. I really wish they had had the time to do that in your Comic-Con. Maybe they will next year, who knows. Just go, and I understand, the other thing is I could be, like a Star Wars fan, guys, I understand you could talk about the prequel and sequel trilogy for 12 hours straight, but can we spend 1 hour talking about the new TV show that the cast is here today? So for time restrictions, I understand. Okay, I'll focus on the thing at hand. But second thing is we need to, and this I will be doing this right now, but it'll take years to really get any progress. That starting now, I'm really trying to just go around to local cons. It might be 5 years or more before we actually work up to having a viable panel scene again. It's a lot of work. And it will be slow progress, but there's a lot more hope now than there was a year ago. I don't, even in the wake of House of the Dragon Season 1, there just wasn't that much presence for it. A lot of cons shut down, but now a lot are opening again. Third thing we need to do, and this is just open-ended, is identify the new generation of news reporters who are actually willing to report on this honestly. Like the new generation who were not part of the blind hype reporters who took over in the late 2010s that we can't really trust, who at best were making fluff reports to fill a quota, and at worst were actively lying to us. Now, just new reporters of this is someone who's actually willing to. Some of them are still active. I mean, like Forbes and Esquire openly criticized Benioff and Weiss, and they still work there. Just willing to call out, it's your fault Dorn is like this, that what you did season 8 is awful. The ones who reported on the Austin Film Fest panel and went, this is really embarrassing, and were willing to say the truth. Just identify them, because you run into them at conventions. That it's weird when you're sitting I've been to more than one year Comic-Con, like when you're just sitting there in the audience and realize interspersed in the audience are multiple reporters from multiple major news sites. And like when I went to one in 2014, there was just the head editor of Inverse was there. So knowing which ones to, hey, you want to come to a fan gathering just to rebuild our social networks. This is not building up towards a campaign against Benioff and Weiss, because even if we had friendly reporters on our side, it is beyond their capacity to do that. By explicit comparison to what happened to Joss Whedon and Dan Schneider, it is a massive chief editor level decision to publish, or even what happened to Neil Gaiman recently, that was more of a personal scandal. It is a massive decision that they cannot make on their own. And I understand that. What we're doing is just getting the infrastructure in place to actually present these things whenever we get our Ray Fisher moment, which is beyond our control. What exactly would that moment look like? Well, I don't think one of the cast members is going to turn on Benioff and Weiss like that, because if they were going to, they would have already. They're afraid of him. They're afraid of being blacklisted by the industry. What might help a little is Benioff and Weiss are still perceived of as too big to fail and above criticism, because they have this giant $200 million contract with Netflix. All they made was a presentable sci-fi show adaptation, Three Body Problem, which is really they hired a third showrunner to do it for them. But even they saw season 1 as a preamble, the real stuff is seasons 2 and 3. Do you realize that since late 2019, the one thing they've always been pointing at is we have a development contract with Netflix, we have a development contract with Netflix, here's our big show that's coming. And for about 4 years now, it's been, we're going to make Three Body Problem, it'll blow everyone's minds. And instead it was a presentable mid-level sci-fi show that got no traction on the award circuit whatsoever. It didn't generate any buzz. I mean, even House of the Dragon generated buzz, even if it wasn't always in the awards. I don't think it's going to be a mega flop, but I don't think seasons 2 and 3 will get the performance they wanted. It won't be the next Stranger Things season 1, Not a breakout hit. Of course, Netflix has renewed their contract with them, but nothing fails like failure, is the phrase I keep using, that as more time passes where they don't have a hit, people will start mulling over turning on them. Joss Whedon, for example, after Justice League, where at the time he blamed the studio, blamed circumstances, that over the next 4 years he didn't really make any other big projects, and therefore it became easier to attack him, because he looked weak. He didn't look like this powerful mogul anymore. So the lesson that's a big thing from philosophy and stuff. If you rule through fear, and you rule through the might makes right, as the instant you're not strong anymore, people will turn on you. Never be weak is the only lesson you've tried to live by. And it goes both ways. So Unless one of the cast members, core cast, like Emilia Clarke, snaps and makes this big Ray Fisher-level reveal, which I think they want to, but they can't. That's not going to happen. We can't force that to happen. And our campaigns are mostly directed at each other, not to get... I'm making these for other news channels, the documentaries. In and of itself, that won't achieve anything. On a scale of years, open-ended, and I am not working towards it specifically, if House of the Dragon Season 1 couldn't grab general public attention for what went wrong on the other show that nearly killed this franchise, the one thing that can is the release of The Winds of Winter. And yes, I know, some worry it won't come out. I think it probably will. Yeah, there's worry about will Book 7 come out or not, but Book 6 we're definitely going to get. Just high level of certainty we're going to get Book 6. We don't need the final book, we just need the next book, because it'll be so radically different from the TV show, it will invite scrutiny. That we were waiting for this thing for 15 years today, and it's still waiting on it. All of that anticipation. I think of like when the build-up to when new Harry Potter books came out. It's like I'd see... like Stephen Colbert and late-night hosts were jokingly sitting down, reading it, and going, "Oh, you've interrupted me. I was reading the new book everyone's lined around the block to see." In today's terms, it would be if there was a new entry in A Court of Thorns and Roses or something. One of the big book series coming out now. Imagine what the public attention will be if and when Winds of Winter actually comes out, and how different it is. And this is clearly not... whatever outline Martin gave Benioff and Weiss, they abandoned voluntarily, and will invite that public backlash. So the day that Winds of Winter comes out, we need to be able to hit the ground running to say we already have documentaries strongly hinting at what really happened. The stuff we know of is the tip of the iceberg in terms of their incompetence. These are the, like when I talk about, oh, we had all these logistic problems that we didn't know what we were doing. These are the parts they're willing to talk about. Imagine the worst things that they don't like talking about. All of that stuff that you let two con men run the biggest show on TV for a decade and ruin it. And they don't know what they're doing. They weren't trying to tell a story. They were trying to pander the lead actors for awards, and were willing to just reassign them storylines of other people if it was a meatier scene, like the Sansa Ramsay stuff. There is no reason for that. This isn't what really happens. Or just for some of it's shock value, some of it's they're panicking because they don't want to be predictable, but how much of that? Like the Prince That Was Promised stuff, I don't think Bran is going to be king of Westeros. I think he's going to be king of Winterfell or king of the Children of the Forest, and they just mixed things around. But Book 6 alone will invite so much comparison that we need to have those documentaries in place, to have established fan channels on YouTube that are in a thriving fandom that's already watching prequels, so we're actually reporting on them to an audience at scale, to discuss this as a comparison between what the book is and what the show was at our own convention panels. We can't force that to happen. What we can do is build up the infrastructure to be in place on a scale of years when it does happen. I honestly think Winds of Winter might come out as early as 29 or 2030, maybe. Because Martin's in a lot better of a mental state now than he was when his friends were dying a year ago, and I think he's going to get a lot done after the launch of Dunk and Egg. Who knows? But I'd say I have at least 2 years before Winds of Winter comes out. It's a better way of putting it. But either way, that just I'll be so busy in 28 anyway, covering End of House of the Dragon, that 27 I want to actually have those documentaries done, to work on them all year, put them out during season 4, and even then recognize, oh no, and now I've had my one shot and I missed it. No, it's an ongoing thing. That we've researched all we can, now it's in presenting mode, of presenting it in different ways, of this is what happened, these were industry problems, and the other half is just keeping an active fandom alive by having fun with prequels. So, all of that is loosely what I'm looking at through the rest of Phase 1, and who knows what's going to happen in Phase 2. An encouraging thing is that Ryan Condal said that HBO really likes this franchise, they just don't want to oversaturate it. Which I get that even DC Comics doesn't have more than 2 live-action shows in a given calendar year. Well, there's a difference between that and an ongoing show that alternates every other year. You mean 2 active shows or 2 shows and one, and you could have 3 shows if one has an off year. So there's never more than 2 in the same year. If a merger goes through, maybe Netflix, I'm actually hoping for Paramount, it could pump a lot more money into the Westeros franchise. Or maybe even Warner on its own if there is no merger. Because they know this is one of our core franchises, like they're ramping it up the way they did for DC. As things heal from the strike season last time, we'll know more by the end of this year. Those are my vague ideas for long term, but short term, my plan is, after House of the Dragon Season 3, spend the second half of the year finally catching up on the behind-the-scenes backlog stuff. This is how we built props and things, the behind-the-scenes videos, because they're fun. And they have a lot of info, and I miss that I never got to do them. My goal now, just all that other stuff is just vagueness, but the goal is Christmas of 2026, be where I should have been 4 years ago, Christmas 2022. Moreover, by the end of 26, we'll know a lot more about what's going on with Warner in terms of the merger, state of the industry. We'll have a better grasp of, did Season 3 of House of the Dragon manage to win back the audience? We'll be looking ahead at Christmas and next month is Dunk and Egg Season 2. So if you're freaking out now, if things were just focus on all the hard work of this year, because we'll be in a better position to know at next Christmas to make long-term plans. Next Christmas is when we focus on long-term plans, because there's so much up in the air with, can House of the Dragon Season 3 win people back? What's going on with the merger? What's going on with elections? Just focusing on Christmas 26. 27, if I'm caught up, which I haven't been in 4 years, I'm going to try to make documentaries from scratch, starting over at better quality. Not that these will achieve anything specific, but just to have them. And in the meantime, we're trying to rebuild our fan networks and fan infrastructure with the convention scene, so even just to socialize. So this will be a lot of work. Hopefully building up to the day we get Winds of Winter. I'm not promising you that this will be easy or that we will have good times. Simpsons joke, I'm not promising you it's going to be easy or good times, and they all start walking away, but this will be a lot of hard work. But I do say that this hard work is how we take our dignity back after everything that happened. I know right now, before Dunk and Egg is even premiered, still living in post-House of the Dragon Season 2 backlash, before Season 3 has a chance to redeem itself, maybe. Right now, start of January 26, we are in a hole at the bottom of a very tall mountain. This chasm at the bottom of a mountain. Rebuilding all this infrastructure and fan campaigns, I know it can seem impossible. But I know this sounds silly, but I think a lot about George R. R. Martin's generation, being at his live panel and in other interviews I've seen of him talking about how Martin and his contemporaries literally built the modern fan conventions in the 1970s. There was nothing before that. That he literally had ticket number 1 at the first Comic-Con. Think of New York Comic-Con, but think of what that generation of sci-fi authors and sci-fi fans built. When this was a genre that was looked down on, even, the early sci-fi writers like Asimov, Bester, Clarke, people looked down on that type of stuff, and that's science fiction. Or the popular science fiction in the 70s, like Star Trek and Star Wars, had to build their own fan conventions. Comic books also looked down on it through late 70s, through the early 80s, when they started to actually become a thing and become established as part of the cultural mindset of we have these Comic-Cons and local conventions. They had to build all of that from scratch. And in 1979, they didn't even have the internet, basic emails, and much less social media to coordinate any of it. They literally did all of this through mailing lists that were delivered in the literal postal services. How would you advertise for a sci-fi convention? Newspaper? Just how the heck did they put all of this together through mailing lists? That the mind boggles at what the challenges they faced and what they managed to achieve in spite of that. The generation that literally built the first sci-fi and comics conventions. Our current setbacks are insignificant compared to the challenges successfully overcome by those who came before us. And just trying to put this into words. We are not the inheritors of frightened men, of men and women who, when faced with daunting tasks, gave up. Instead, we are the legacy of those who fought hard for what they believed in, until they made the impossible into the possible. I mentioned before in this recording here, so I'll say again. I said when I was a small child, my parents got divorced, so my mother was in a really tough spot. Single mother, no child support, and then her own mother randomly died months later. That just, wow. And despite all the challenges we're facing now, I don't mean like TV shows, I mean me feeling challenged and it's a tough job market post-pandemic and all the craziness going on in the economy in 2025, I have to step back and go, this is nothing compared to what she went through. Or like thinking back to like her father, who I knew him, that growing up through the Great Depression and then going through World War II, and then achieving a solid middle-class status of living. I do not know how he did that. I do not know how she survived as a single mother with her mother dying, no child support. How did you do that? And years later as an adult, when I've asked her, I feel better thinking about how you got through what you were facing, because I would have shut down in your position. How did you do it? You're my hero for getting through that. I can't even conceive of someone surviving that. And her answer always sticks with me, that she doesn't shift to this tone of, sage advice, like in the tone of Optimus Prime or something, giving sage advice. No, she waves it aside to stop praising me. She waves it aside and I did what I had to do, that I didn't have a choice, is her answer. Shutting down was never an option. I had to take care of you and survive, so I didn't have a choice. I didn't choose to be brave or somehow get through this. And that always stuck with me, that when you care about other people, or when you believe in a principle, when you think truth is more than just a word, and it's an ideal to be upheld, when you care about and believe in things, you don't have a choice when those things are threatened. No one chooses to be brave. The Star Wars fans who were upset about some bad decisions happening in the franchise, they don't really get a choice in their own minds. It's not a choice about whether we fight something or not, because they want to defend something they believe in. If you're struggling in a post-pandemic job market, but you want to do right by your family, you don't have a choice but to keep moving forward. You can't fail, because failure is not an option. There was never a choice. It's something you have to do. And that's oddly comforting for me, that it's really, you're not confronted with a choice of giving up, because there is no choice. Defending these things is inherent to us, that we do it because we are compelled, because it's who we are. So we're going to keep doing these things and fighting and building because we have to. We know this. This is core to us. This is who we are. So we will keep doing these things. And for anyone criticizing us, you're idealistic, I don't think they understand that. They don't understand what it's like when people believe in things, when they care about things. And that's not an ideal, that's reality.